Good. Here we have a speech by Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is also in Likuti Sichot Aleph, and it talks about the difference between the dreams of Paro and the dreams of Yosef. Okay, for this, all these two sections, this week, next week, last week, we're talking about dreams. Dreams are a very central feature of these, Torah portions. First of all, it starts off with Yosef has these dreams, right? With he dreams and his brothers gets all angry. They get all angry about it. He dreams that there's a bunch of sheaths in a field, and they're all gathered together, and then all these sheaths bow down to Yosef. Yosef's sheath, a bundle of like wheat. So the 11 bundles of the brothers all bow down to Yosef. Then they have 11 stars, and the sun and the moon, they bow down to Yosef. Yosef's stars. That makes his brothers all mad and everything. And eventually they sell him into slavery. So he goes into slavery, and there's another time dreams. The minister of wine has a dream. And the minister of bread, he has a dream. Right? They were both thrown into jail, I guess life sentences, for some sort of a minor infraction that they both did against they disappointed Paro or something. So Yosef said to the minister of wine, "You're going to get out. I interpret your dream, you're going to get out." And the interpretation of the dream of the bread, he said, "You're not going to get out, you're going to get killed." Oh, good. Then after that, one day they pull Yosef out of the 2 years later, they pull Yosef out of the prison, and they say, "We're taking you to Paro's house." It's okay, it's better than sitting in prison. Why? It's because Paro had some dreams. So we already had, the whole thing began with Yosef's dreams. And then Yosef got out of prison. That's sort of what put him in prison. And then what got him out of prison was the dreams of these two ministers that had been imprisoned. And then he gets elevated to be the king of the whole world because of Paro's dreams. Right. So what does Paro dream about? So Paro also has these dreams that really like trouble him, very, very much. He has these cows that they eat each other. Skinny cows eat fat cows, and then he has these skinny sheaves of wheat, and they eat the fat ones. So Paro, he's like really troubled by this dream. No one can explain it to him properly. He can't leave the thing alone. He realizes these dreams are very, very important. And no one interprets it properly. And someone happens to mention, who was that someone, that the minister of wine, that, there was this fellow in prison. He would have never done it, but nobody else knew what to say. So Yosef there was this guy, this Jew, and he interpreted my dream. So they pull him out, and Yosef interprets Paro's dream properly. And he says that you saw these 7 oxes, skinny ones, they ate up the fat ones, and then you saw the 7 skinny, stalks of wheat, and the skinny ones ate the fat ones, because there's going to be good years, 7 fat years, and the skinny ones are going to eat up the fat ones. There's going to be 7 bad years. So Paro says, I like that. You know how to interpret their dreams. So you know what? And then Yosef gives him all this advice, how to do it, how to store up and out of this. So Paro says, you know what? You be the king. You be the king. I'll just take it easy. I see that you're an honest person, and okay. So here we go. I mean, first of all, it's pretty amazing because there was nobody that was honest in those days. Everybody was just selfish. And Yosef, you could see that he was really caring about other people, which that's sort of a theme of this whole business. And that's why it says that the the brothers' sheaths bowed down to him, because in fact Yosef was a totally different person, and he was only doing it to benefit them. They were holy people, but he was like holy of holies. And the same thing, Yosef, he saw the two ministers were miserable, so he asked them, "Why are you miserable?" Which he had no reason to do that, but he did. He should have, Rebbe pointed out, he should have been happy the ministers were suffering. Why should he suffer alone? And then afterwards, the same exact thing happened with Paro. He interpreted the dream in a way that it saved the whole entire world. So this is like a theme that Yosef really cares about other people. And he doesn't care so much about himself, or he doesn't care at all about himself. Okay, so here we go. Let's see what the Rebbe has to say. In Ane from Parshas Miketz, in the beginning of this week's Torah portion, when Ozoy also in the previous Torah portion, Vayeshev, Tarzelt the Torah Vegin Chalomos. The Torah tells about dreams. There Chalom from Paro, the dream of Paro, and the dream this week, and the dream of Yosef, with the dreams of the minister of wine and the minister of bread. This is Parshas Vayeshev, previous week. The Allah Chalomos, all these dreams, Zayin and Gavin, they were Sibos reasons gebracht zu Galus Mitzrayim, to the exile of Egypt. Okay, now that's going to be in another couple of weeks. But these stories, as isolated as they seem to be, this really was laying the stage for the exile of all the millions and millions and millions of Jewish people in Egypt for 210 years. Why? Because Yosef goes down to Egypt. He interprets the dream, becomes king of the world. Egypt in that time was ruling the whole world. And he saved the world from famine. There was a famine in the whole world. Everyone came down to Paro, save us. And amazingly, Paro had food. Why did he have food? Because Yosef told him to store up the food from the plentiful years. So he has food, and everybody sells themselves and all their property and everything to Paro. So the Jews are riding high. They got and so Yosef, his brothers come down. Anyway, finally, all the brothers come down to Egypt. They're also looking for food. And Yosef reveals himself, and he says, "Stay here in Egypt." So they say, "Okay, we'll stay here. We got nothing to do back in Israel anyway, because there's no food." So they stay there in Egypt, and it's really good for them. And they have this special place, land of Goshen, where they can prosper, they can succeed. And all of a sudden comes a new king. That's going to be in the book of Exodus. A new king that forgets about Yosef. Who is Yosef? All of a sudden he sees this tremendous potential of manpower from the Jewish people, and at no wages whatsoever. So he enslaves the Jewish people, and that's it. They're just slaves. So they're slaves for 210 years, and various different stages of slavery. Like this, I think they say that the actual hardcore slavery was like 91 years, something like that. In any case, even 5 minutes is too much. So they were slaves in Egypt, and that's it. They're slaves. And all of a sudden comes along Moses, and there's big miracles, and the Jews get out, they receive the Torah, and etc. That's going to be the next book. But all these dreams, they set the stage for the exile of Egypt. The Mshur is the source from all, and that's the source of all the exiles. Okay, now the Jewish people are not like everybody else. The Jewish people, there's a lot of religions, a lot of nationalities, a lot of nations in the world, races, philosophies, ideas, right? Communism, capitalism. These people believe in different, economic systems that unify people together. But the Jews have this thing, at least that's what the Jews claim, that they were born in slavery. The Jewish people were enslaved. That's where they were born. They were born in slavery, the Jewish people. There was before that there was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, true, and then there was their children, the tribes. And when they came down to Egypt, it says there were 70 people. And when they got out, only 1/5 got out. And that was like about 3 million people got out. But that was it. Before that, there was basically no real Jewish people. They all got out. They received the Torah. They received all these laws. And that differentiated them also from non-Jews. But before that, they were differentiated in that they were all slaves. No one else was slaves. A whole entire nation to this very day. That was 3,300 years ago. And we still believe this story. So that's it. What set the stage for this weird Jewish history were these dreams. Just like everything else in the world, is this hashkacha pratis, is with, one second, let me make this bigger over here. Let me make this bigger. Why should I squint? Right? Just like everything in the world is with hashgacha pratis. What does hashgacha pratis mean? This is a very important word, especially according to Hasidut Chabad. Very important. Hashgacha means that God, and in this case, it means he directs everything. God observes and directs everything, and pratis means everything. So hashgacha means that God observes and directs, and pratis means every prat, every detail. So every detail in the world is directed and, how do you say, intended by God to fit in with this whole amazing symphony of meaning that includes everything in the world. Memela, so therefore, is verstanden, understood as there's mesovev, the result is exile, hatashayches, an enlich is similar to the reason, to the cause, which is dreams. So if the dream causes, let me just, one second, I want to close the door over here. Okay, so somehow or other, this whole entire exile, the whole story of the Jewish people being in this is whole, the cause of it is a dream, and it must be that somehow or other it is similar to a dream. Let's see, the sheikh is the connection between exile, the exile that the Jewish people were in back then, and that we still remain in, albeit in a different form, to a dream is what happened? Oh, you gotta go. There we go. Is you get sailed in verschiedene Erter. It's mentioned in several places as Oich Torah, also in Torah, or that what as a chalom, that a dream. What is exactly a dream? A dream nemtzich. Excuse me 1 minute. Get my pointer back here again. As a dream nemtzich from koach hamadame. It comes from the power of imagination. Far stellungus koach. Interesting. Anyway, the power of imagination. Welcher far einzig, which can unify zwei Gegensätzen zusammen. It can unify two opposite things together. The power of imagination, or of, what do you want to call it? Of imagination. The mayon. Beers until you have a pila b'kupa b'machta. Until you can have an elephant jumping through the hole of a needle. This translates in English. an elephant in the room. Oib hat nor freer getracht wegen them. It has to be that you thought about this previously, and then like a dream, right? What is a dream? A dream, all of a sudden you're dreaming, and you have a dream where you're in, you're in Tel Aviv, and you're doing something, and all of a sudden you're in a rocket ship, and you're talking, and all of a sudden the person you're talking to turns into a cow, and then after that you're swimming in the river, and it just goes from one place to another, and it all seems natural. It seems like it's just no, you don't ask any questions. You're talking to a person, hey, how did you turn to be a cow? No, you just, no problem. That's the power of imagination. So the power of imagination, and that's what unites all opposites, and that's what makes dreams. Huh? Also in the time from exile, it appears as hat lieb dem Eberster, that maybe you love God, and from deswegen, nevertheless, hat lieb sein in eigenem Guf, but you still love your body. Huh? Very common. Very common. A person can say, you give them, yeah, but I know people like that. Right? The honest people, like, you give lectures on being honest, and they personally themselves are not honest. They can give lectures about love and forbearance and having patience with others, and they can convince other people not to do, but they don't themselves. They don't themselves. So that's like a dream. What in the world is a dream? A person genuinely, honestly, 100% with all of his heart believes in honesty and believes in God and believes in Judaism, believes in this. But on the other hand, all of a sudden you see him doing exactly the opposite. And you ask him why, and he'll make up some sort of excuses and this. But if he sees another person doing it, right, then he'll say, "Why, that fool wasn't he at my lecture? I explained why. Well, if he would just come to my lecture, I'll explain." And so it says, it's possible for a person to believe in God and at the same time to do the opposite. Even though beide Sachen, both things, beide Sachen, all of the Erkegen, are against gleichzeitig, they're simultaneously opposites. Wenn nicht gemalt Kegen gleichzeitig nicht gemalt sein, because you can't, it's self-contradictory. You can't say I'm an honest person and cheat at the same time. I mean, you can do it if when you say you're an honest person, you're cheating, but you're not. He's genuinely saying he's honest, and at the same time, he's genuinely cheating. Bis wann, until as vies wird Zeit zweiter Ort declare, like it's explained in another place, can liegen in Taivas, a person can have big desires, und filo over sein auf dem Eberster's Ratzon, and he can actually go against what God wants. From this, we can nevertheless, fear Torah is dort in Torah or, but it says in Torah or, in this, that's the place we're learning right in the morning, but it's a different place. As men nit main, don't think as vibalt as nachan davening, that after, for instance, you finish praying, and in praying you're talking about how much you love God with all of your heart, and you genuinely do love God when you're praying. But you shouldn't think that if after you finish praying to God, you do things that are against God, you shouldn't think that ton forget wir het gehalt in davening is a right, that this must be a proof as sein tefillah, that his prayer and his Torah and the commandments, that they're nothing, they're not worth anything. The guy's he's lying to himself. No. Und das ist nicht so, it's not so. The source from the cholom, the source from dreams, is from seinen hecher oit, it's from such a high place that it can unite two opposites. So he genuinely does love God, and he genuinely is an honest person. But at the same time, he can go against God and be a dishonest person. How can that possibly be? This is because that's like a dream. Exile is like a dream. That's the whole thing of a dream. Right? It doesn't catch himself. It doesn't understand what he's doing. By Yeda Yidden, by every single Jew, is their nefesh as a godly soul. And godly soul is olam gans, it's always whole. The Torah, the mitzvahs, the Torah and the commandments, which a Jew does, Zainin Ebek, are eternal. The olam vo'ed, they're forever and ever. The kegen, which is not so, I'm sorry. That's right. Dagegen die nicht richtige Sachen, was tut, seinen mehr nicht wie als Zweitleil. The negative things and the opposite things that he does, he lies, he cheats, those are only temporary. Because every Jew, because in the end, everyone is Jew is going to do tshuva. The mele is euch itzter seinen ze nit kein dover shal kayama. So therefore, when a Jew does a sin, the sins aren't really permanent. A ständige Sache, a permanent thing. When a zoe vi narosam chazvim, like it says that there's what's called, how do you say, the temporary rivers. Teichen welchen trinken sich, rivers that dry up. It says that when you bring the water for the red cow, this whole offering with the red cow, so it has to be mayim chayim. It has to be living water. So it means it can also be taken from a river, but it has to be a river that doesn't stop, that it flows all the time. It says, what if the river flows all the time, but 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, that's a long time, 6 years, 7 years. But then after 7 years, it stops for a while. And then it goes back again. I can't use that. It has to be constantly flowing. So it's the same thing. A person can tell the truth. He's telling the truth, and he really believes in the truth, but all of a sudden, he stops telling the truth. What happens? So he says, the Rebbe, you have to understand a very basic principle. That which you're lying, the lying, that's temporary. That's not really real. And that which you tell the truth, that's really true. How can you do both one at a time? It's because we're in a dream. But you should know that the bad things that a person does, they're only temporary. They're not really real. It's a temporary lapse of consciousness. And therefore, can nit der ra, the bad, cannot iber vegan. It can't, how do you say, overcome, God forbid, the good. Well, because there is nit kind of, because it's not really a permanent thing. The kegen the tov against the good is alamul God's, which is not the case. The good, it's always there. When in them and in this is the Maila, there's an advantage in the time of exile over the time of the Holy Temple. Why? In the time of the Holy Temple, haben gil leuchten, the kochos panimi, they lit the internal powers. What happened? 1 minute. Oh, lichten, they lit up the inside of. Sorry. Excuse me. Geleuchten lit the inner powers, the innerwegstige koch from the soul, love of God, understanding God. And if them and on them is the hagbala, there's a limit. Bar Granitzen. Therefore, tar tame nitarangi kumen mikdash. Therefore, a person, an impure person, could not come into the holy temple. If you were pure, you were pure. You can go into the temple. If you're impure, you can't go in. Right? Everything was clearly defined. But in the time now, in the time of exile, lechten the kochas amakifim, which is called surrounding powers, infinite powers of the soul. In them and in this, nit kind of begrenzt, there's no limit. Azoi vi and state, like it says, Hashochen itam betoch tumasam. It says that God dwells even in their impurity. The Rebbe Paul from this. So what's the teaching from this? That's like a dream. Now in the time of exile, it's like a dream, right? You can have a person that's totally bad. In the time of the Holy Temple, a person that was totally bad, a person that, let's say, he had warning, etc., and he did bad. He didn't keep Shabbos. On Shabbos, he purposely lit a fire on Shabbat. He was told not to do it. He was told what the warning is. He has 2 witnesses, and he says, I don't care, and he lights fire. He would get killed. The punishment was death. It says it was almost impossible to kill someone back then, but the punishment was death. Nowadays, since the temple was destroyed, even before that, actually, there was no death penalty anymore. No more death penalty. So what happens if a person goes against, it says in the Bible, you go against God, you get killed. It says, yeah, it's true, you get killed, but in the time of the temple, it would actually be applied physically, because that was the only way to fix you up. Now that the temple is not here, a person has to know that if you go against Shabbos, right? That in the time of the temple you would be killed. If it was a normal time, you would be killed, right? If you had witnesses in it. But now you can fix it up in one instant. It's like a dream. Why? Because that you go against Shabbos, you don't keep the Shabbat or whatever it is, that's only a temporary thing, a temporary unconsciousness, a craziness. The true essence of your Jew, he wants to keep Shabbos. What's the question? All he has to do is come to this true essence. He says, 1 second, if that's the true essence of the Jew, then how does he not keep Shabbat? He says, we're in exile, we're in a gullus. It's a dream. So therefore, the bad things that are, what does the teach? What does this teach us then? What does this teach us? What does this teach us? The Horoah B'Poel is like this. Not like those people who mistakenly think as the einziger meglicher Weg, the only way is gehen mit a mesuder dika avoda. You have to serve God in an orderly way, from gringer, from easy, and then more difficult. When calls him on it all the time, there is nit fartik, he's not finished with the first stage of serving God, doing simple service of God, learning Torah, etc. As can nit anheben, he cannot begin trachten wegen the hecher trop. He can't start learning things about, the spiritual aspects of the Torah, loving God, fearing God, serving God with all of your heart. Can't do that immediately. You have to start off little by little. Says the Rebbe, it's a mistake. Der Welt, das Welt gewen rechte. This way of serving God might have been true if everything Volten Gewen be in Mesudrek. If it was in the time of the temple when everything was clearly defined and orderly. But because now we are in exile and we are like dreamers. This is what King David said. Can men, darf men, we can and we must. Tan yeder avoda, everything we do with an avodas Hashem, serving God, was kumt to their hand. Whatever comes to our hand, we have to do. Loitem anwesing, like it says, chataf ochel, chataf v'shetze. You have to grab and eat, grab and drink. What does it mean? Comes to your an opportunity to love God, to fear God. Afilu dem, even a person, is a zoy matzav, is such a state. Is matzav, was oifim shtei, what it says, I efshar, la'atchil lavod Hashem, I cannot begin to serve God without shiaset tshuva, until he repents for his past deeds, right? A person's a big sinner, he did really bad things, so now he wants them to do things, start to put on tefillin, he says, listen, first of all, my friend, you're defiling the tefillin, you're defiling learning the Torah, you want to fix yourself up. First of all, repent. Ask God for forgiveness. Repent for all the bad things that you did. Number one. Then we can, says, maybe that used to be the way in when there's a holy temple. But nowadays, no. From deswegen pasuk the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad says in the Tanya, which Tanya is the Penimis of the Torah. That's the inside, the mysteries of the Torah. And also in Shulchan Aruch, which that's the revealed Torah. As oich that this person also, a big sinner, they're learning Torah, he should learn Torah and doing the commandments. Even though they're defiled temporarily, as he is temporarily giving power to evil. Mikol makom, nevertheless, is erdach zicher shelo yidach mimenu nidach, certainly will not be pushed away from God, anyone. Und dann vet oich sein Torah, his Torah and the commandments coming back. And we'll come back, we'll be corrected. Let me just give an example of this. We're going to stop here, we'll continue this tomorrow, but I want to give an example of this. When we had the yeshiva, now the yeshiva is on Zoom, right? When we had the yeshiva, So sometimes there would come people and they would sit into classes. They would want classes, right? The worst people that would come in to, give classes, I almost would want to evict them. Were people who were doing a report or doing a article for a newspaper or something about Judaism. Why? Because they would sit in the class and they would be tremendously interested. They would ask questions. They want to know all the details, but they wanted to know it only for their report. They didn't want to know it for themselves. Right? They personally had no intention of taking anything whatsoever that was being said about Judaism to heart. If you'd ask them, would you like to put on tefillin first? They would say, no, I don't want to. I don't put on tefillin. Right? If I have to, in order to do it for my class, for my lecture, for my this, I'm willing to put on tefillin. I'll do it. Right? I'm willing to do it. So I would say to them, yes, it's necessary. You have to put on tefillin. I knew they had no intention whatsoever. They would make the blessing. But here the Rebbe is saying that's not so. The fact is, internally, every Jew wants to do all the commandments. Every Jew wants to do all the commandments. And because they only want to do the commandments, so if you do the commandments with them, even though they have no intention, I just want to. So that's what the Rebbe is saying. Dreams. And Yosef had dreams. The two ministers had dreams. Paro had dreams. And eventually all these dreams brought to what's called the Jewish exile. The birth of the Jewish nation in Egypt in exile. And afterwards, the ensuing exiles that came afterwards, the first temple was destroyed, the second temple was destroyed, we're now all scattered around. But the Rebbe wants to say the one common factor which is there is dreams. And what is a dream? A dream has a bad side to it, and a dream has a good side. Dream is not really reality. On the other hand, dreams dream about reality. And we see that in a dream, there can be two totally opposites. So also now the Jewish people when they're in exile. The essence of the Jewish people is good. The essence of man is good. But the essence of the Jewish people is good and to do the will of God. That's the essence of every Jew. Every Jew wants to do what God desires. That's every Jew. Every Jew does what God wants. Not necessarily true about every non-Jew, but there is the potential there for every non-Jew, if the Jewish people let them know that they can do what's good. Okay, maybe there's exceptions. There's the anti-Semites. There's Jews that have been the essence they hate. There's non-Jews that they hate God, but we're not talking about that. Every Jew in his essence is good, but we see that we don't see that essence. We see a lot of Jews that are really, seriously messed up. Says the Rebbe, it's like a dream. The whole thing is like a dream. That what you see Jews doing, not what's not right, that's a dream. That's not really, really real. It's a dream. And so therefore, what does this mean to us? It means that the good exists dormant inside of every single Jew. And every Jew wants to learn the Torah, and every Jew wants to do all the commandments, and every Jew wants to be good. You don't see that they are. It says, don't worry about it. It's like a dream. The bad things are not really real. Bad things are not really real. And therefore, you can take a person like this and you can teach him Torah, and you can do commandments with him, even though it says you shouldn't. Because now we are in a time of the exile, a time of dreaming, where and to bring out the good, eventually we'll see that the good is the reality, and that the bad is really the dream state that can exist simultaneously with the that can exist simultaneously with the good. The good is eternal and the bad is not, but they can exist simultaneously. Why? In the time of the temple they couldn't, because then it was true awareness. Now it's dream state, because the dream state, so therefore the bad can transform to be good in one instant. As we're going to continue, God willing, tomorrow. Have a good day with Moshiach now. Happy Chanukah.